Hello, everybody. Welcome to KFC SuperCoach TV for round 10. Another massive week in KFC SuperCoach. They're all massive weeks in KFC SuperCoach, especially this year. There's always plenty of drama, plenty going on, and there is plenty happening in the world of sport and AFL today. So just myself and the Phantom for now. We might be lucky enough if one of our colleagues can escape the news desk for a minute and jump on and help us out. Although I don't know where Dan Batten is. Haven't heard from him at all. So, Phantom, the chase down is on, and I think he's running scared by the sound of it.
That is the big question now. Where is Dan Batten? It's gutless. We like to throw that term around sometimes in KFC SuperCoach. I think he's even used it when describing certain players when they're tagged. So this is a very gutless performance from Dan Batten. He called me out, I think, 3 weeks ago now on this very show. And then also on your podcast in the same week, called me out. Since then, I'm about plus 190, 191 to be exact, if you're keeping score out there, on Dan Batten since he called me out. So the chase down definitely is on. So disappointing not to see him, but at least the punters will get some rock-solid advice from you and I today.
Yeah, hopefully. So check your questions underneath, and plenty to go through. There's already a few flowing in, so we'll jump on those very shortly. First, a quick shout out to any of the SuperCoach fans who were at the gig I went to last night at the Corner Hotel. Got approached by a couple of people, including bumped into the champion himself, JP, still on a high after winning KFC SuperCoach last year. So that was always enjoyable when you're out and about to just meet some big KFC SuperCoaches. We know how big the game is. Also want to mention that we're excited to launch the third year of Indigenous Sports Month at News Corp, celebrating the Indigenous Australian participation and excellence in sport. Check out all the exclusive interviews, in-depth features, and top 50 Indigenous athletes of all time at indigenousportmonth.com.au, and plenty of great footy and some good KFC SuperCoach names in there as well. So check that out. But Phantom, you put up a really interesting, I would say, essential reading article yesterday. Your burning questions for the week. So go and check those out if you haven't read them already at Code Sports and the Advertiser and the Herald Sun. But it laid out a plan over the next few weeks. And I must admit, I've been a little bit this year. It's just been, surviving 1 week to the next. But I think if you can do it, what you want to do is start looking ahead, especially with the buys only a couple of weeks away, to figure out, where am I going to get to? What is my team going to look like in 2 weeks, in a month's time, at the other end of the buys? Because we've been chopping and changing a lot with injuries, and there's more this week that we have to deal with. But eventually, we are trying to get a team full of premium players on the field. We don't want to have to field Alex Chincotta, guys like this, if we can avoid it. So can you quickly, without giving too much away, Fan, what was sort of the process behind that? And what do you think people should be doing out there with their teams?
Just quickly, it didn't surprise me. Didn't take you as a Kiss Chasey fan, our Peyton. You saw last night, so very good to see. My trade plan now. I thought I need to do it. I need to look down, look at really crunch the numbers and see where I want to get to and how I'm going to get there, because we've had to deal with a lot of spot fires in KFC SuperCoaches. I've had to put out a few. You've had to put out a few KFC SuperCoaches across the country. I've at least put out a couple in the opening 9 rounds of the season. So we've been trading at will almost. We've spoken about this on the show before. We want to go aggressive, what we learned last year with the extra trades and the boost, but we've got an extra round this year. They're going to run out quickly. We still want to get to a completed team, but people are using a lot of trades and still not pushing forward to get to that goal. So I looked at what I was going to do and what I sort of had to do over the next couple of weeks to ensure I come out the buy rounds with a team close to full of premiums. And by looking back, it means I'm not going to trade probably in the next couple of weeks. I need to eke out as much cash as I can from the Alex Chincottas, Sam Simpson, Seamus Mitchells of the world to be able to afford those upgrades I want to do in the buy round, players coming off the buy. So hopefully Jack Steele's knee is okay. Lockie Neal, 550k potentially after the buy. They're the couple of names I'm going to look at when we get to rounds 13 and 14. And then obviously Max Gawn after the buy. Hopefully he's a forward by then. Sam Walsh, who again, if you read the story online right now, you can see all the numbers, who's close to SuperCoach DPP in round 12. Sam Walsh is a chance. So he's expensive. Might not be able to get to him, but targeting one of those other forwards, Sam Walsh, maybe even Jack McRae, if Beverly does KFC SuperCoaches a favour. But what I learnt was I had to ease up on the trades now, make as much cash as I can from some of the rookies I've got, and then work towards those final few upgrades through the buy round, give myself a competitive team each week, and obviously hopefully come out the other side with the last 6 or 7 rounds, full steam ahead with a premium team. But obviously, I'm not going to get any injuries until then.
Yes.
Everything's going to go well. So subject to change, my plan.
Well, we are due a change of luck, but yeah, obviously you need to be able to make adjustments on the run, as we always tend to do. But yeah, I think just taking a step back for a second and taking a look at your overall team and where you're positioned, and that includes looking at the buys. It was really nearly the first time I've done it all year is actually in SuperCoach Plus. Look at that buy planner, how many players I've got for round 12, 13, 14, 15. I think for a lot of people, round 12 won't be too bad with only 4 teams on the buy. But for me, I've got a few, sort of Sydney, St Kilda, I think are a couple of the clubs. So I can't really afford to be getting any more players in that have a buy that round. The next week we should be okay with Geelong and Gold Coast. And then the next 2 are going to be really tricky. Lots of players missing around 14, 15. So, have that in the back of your mind. Someone like Sam Walsh is a good example where, it'd be a fantastic addition, but is it a good idea to bring in someone who is on the buy where you've already got a heap of premiums who are going to be out? So these are the things we should be thinking about. It's interesting. You inspired me to do a similar exercise and try and map out the next 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm in a very different situation to you in that I've sort of held back a little bit on my trades, played a bit more conservative. I've still got 2 boosts left somehow. And I've actually got some of these rookies that have appreciated in cash, like a Connor McKenna or Oscar Baker, who are actually worth a little bit of money. So, good time to cash them in and, try and maybe catch up to some other people who traded in a premium or 2 ahead of me. But the problem that I'm finding, and I think this is going to be an issue, for all our plans going forward, is that they all rely on being able to catch these guys, catch them in to down. You generally need someone to downgrade to bring in another fresh rookie to make 150 grand or so, and then you can go and upgrade someone else to a premium. But finding those cheapies to come in to downgrade to is going to be the real challenging part, because there's just not a lot around. We've got the mid-season draft in a couple of weeks, which might help us out. But starting this week, would you advocate, of all the options out there, the cheapies, who do you like? And could you potentially, like in my situation, I could use a boost and bring in 2 cheapies and make a good upgrade and have some cash for next week. But are there 2, rookie price bubble boy type players that are worth bringing in?
Yeah, it's hard. I don't love any of the options this week. Obviously, Bailey Humphrey, the first-year Gold Coast Sun, 213k mid-forward, was big with the KFC SuperCoach ton last week. The lowest break-even in the comp, negative 59. He's going to make some serious cash over the next few weeks. You think he's good for the buys as well with Gold Coast and Geelong on that standalone bye week. But again, he's been subbed out of 2 games this year as well. I think with 1 touch in 3 quarters a couple of weeks ago. So it looked a lot more comfortable against the Eagles and then the week before as well. So I don't think he's necessarily going to have 1 kick and be subbed out in the last quarter again. But it depends who you're going down from. I guess in a way. Like I said, I don't love all of them. Harry Sharp's got a good break even with KFC SuperCoach famous from a couple of years ago. Graduated school now. He's playing 123k. He's been pretty good. He was pretty good last week, 16 touches or 17 touches, I think, in the Lions side. Same with Tommy Berry, obviously the former Lion, who's now at the Suns playing a small forward role. I think Stewie Jew said on Wednesday that Nick Holman looks like likely to come back in the team. But they've been pretty happy with what Berry's done, and they could play in the same team. They were Stuart Jew's words. So that'll be a watch. But I think they've all got you can have a slight concern or slight risk attached to each of them. But again, they're probably going to make you a bit of money. And when you look at the longer term situation, there's not a lot that look like they're going to pop up. But again, 4 weeks ago, we didn't think we were going to be considering Harry Sharp and Tommy Berry as well as downgrade options. So take it when it's there. I'm not sure I'd rush to do 2, especially with the state of some benches around the country. You might be a little bit different. My bench, already a lot of red crosses or red dots on there. So I wouldn't rush to do it if you're in a similar boat to mine. But again, if you can make some money, say for Connor McKenna or someone like that, Cade Chandler, maybe down to a Bailey Humphrey when you're still making the cash, and then you take Bailey Humphrey's price, cash injection over the next couple of weeks, then it works. But I'm not a fan of sort of sidewaysing a Bailey Humphrey or trading an Owen Davey to Bailey Humphrey just for the cash. I think you've got to make money off it too.
Yeah, well, I did trade Alwyn Davey to Rory Atkins last week for that exact reason. So, yeah, I probably wouldn't want to do it 2 weeks in a row with two sort of 200 grand players. I mean, one move I am considering, I'll throw this at you. We'll get some questions from the listeners, or you can answer mine first. And that is considering actually holding Jacob Hopper for a week, because at least we know he's not going to lose any money. And that would mean trading out McKenna and trading out Cade Chandler, who both have really high break evens. Chandler over 100, McKenna's 88. So unless they pull out a big game, which we haven't seen for a while, they're both going to drop in cash. And every dollar seems like it's just so valuable going forward. The worry would be it would leave me with basically nobody on the midfield bench. They'd all be red crosses. Is that too risky? Or I suppose a lot of it's going to depend on teams, isn't it? Whether some of the, Blake Drury, these guys, or even Campbell Chester comes back in. So we need some of these players to be named.
Yeah, and Matt Johnson too from Freo, if you've still got him, served this 2-game ban. He was pretty good against the Lions as well, which obviously included that dangerous tackle. So he could come back in. I think that'd be a big boost for KFC SuperCoach. Benches, Jacob Hopper's an interesting one. You would know that I'm weighing up to hold an LDU for similar reasons to continue to different reasons. But given we've only got 2 more weeks of full 22 scoring, and then we've got 4 weeks of best 18 scoring in KFC SuperCoach over the bye round. So take the Hopper hit for a couple of weeks, or in my case, LDU for a couple of weeks. Hopefully he misses 3 or 4, then get him back, and I've still upgraded around him. That is my thought with that. But as we spoke about before, he's a genuine premium LDU. I want him in my final side. Do you want Jacob Hopper in your final side? That's what you probably got to ask yourself. With a few extra trades and a boost, maybe you don't. Maybe there's some teams out there that would keep Jacob Hopper in their final side, given the amount of trades they've got left. So I'd look to probably move him on. I think there's enough money in there. If you've got enough cash elsewhere, you can sort of use the 2 grades to upgrade him. I think. Again, probably leave yourself a bit exposed by keeping him. What are you doing? Are you just delaying the inevitable that you are going to trade him? I think that's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would be, but the idea would be instead of, say, trading him this week and Chandler next week, when Chandler might have lost 15 grand off his price, get Chandler out now and save Hopper for next week. But yeah, it does leave me exposed if there's a laid out or something. And the way SuperCoach has gone this year, it wouldn't be a surprise. We've had plenty of injuries. I saw, Mick here mentioned another one that we've found out about in the last couple of days. Around that Hopper value, some people held on to Will Setterfield, and it's just his scores haven't been what we hoped, and now he's got a broken foot. Someone stood on his foot last week, and he had some scans and came back and found a fracture, so he's out for a while. So he's another one that unless again you want to hold him for your final team, but I don't think you probably do. So he's another player that has to be traded out along with the Callum Mills. Hopefully Jack Steele is a watch, and even if he misses, it might only be a week. But yeah, it's pretty tough going in KFC SuperCoach at the moment with so many injuries. So we'll get to some of the questions that people are throwing at us. One from Jono on YouTube. If people haven't checked us out, we're on YouTube now. I've been there for a little while, SuperCoach official. But he's asking about Hollands to Merritt and Stocker to Sharp. So Liam Stocker's been a really good starting pick. I think his break-even's still not too high because he had 100 a couple of weeks ago, but he's probably made about as much as you want to try and get out of him. So if you downgrade him to Sharp and then turn Ollie Hollands, who was he injured last week? He got subbed off, I think, didn't he? So there's another one. Yeah, turn him into Zach Merritt. And I really like this move because although Essendon's midfield, it's really hard to know what's going on there because they throw different players in there every week. But surely with Setterfield out and Parrish out, they've got to give Zach Merritt a good run, and he has a fantastic record against Richmond. 105, 130 plus scores in a row against them. And then he's got North and West Coast after that. So, he's my number one target for an upgrade in the midfield this week.
Yeah, I like it. Only 10 games ago as well, round 23, I think, of the MCG, 150 points for Zach Merritt against the Tigers. It didn't produce as many hoped or expected last week against the Lions. 95 KFC SuperCoach points, a quiet second half. But again, Richmond, West Coast and North in the next 3 weeks for him. I like it too, 567K. Good buying. I think our friend Tim Mitchell pointed out that obviously West Coast and Xavier O'Neill tagged Gold Coast Noah Anderson last week. They haven't been doing a lot of that every week. Obviously, Adam Simpson pointed out just how good a form Noah Anderson was in coming into that game. Whether he sees an equal threat in Zach Merritt is probably a different question. So it's a chance, but I wouldn't avoid Zach Merritt because of that potential tag. Xavier O'Neill doesn't do it every week as such, neither do the Eagles. So I agree. Lock him in.
And yeah, we did there's some fixture analysis this week that showed that Essendon has the easiest fixture from here to the end of the season. So obviously the next couple of weeks have looked pretty good, and then I think they might get Hawthorn, West Coast, North again in the run home. They've had a pretty tough draw so far, so hopefully that might lead to some big scores from Zach Merritt, who we saw last year, came home an absolute freight train. Now Daniel Watts has another trade plan. He's looking at Chandler out, which I think is a good move. Hollands as well, and then he's looking at Matt Rowell and Blake Drury. So a couple of interesting names there. A lot of people traded in Drury last week of his first game, which was quite promising, and then only scored the 17 points. But he is only 102K, so I think the temptation is definitely there, especially if he's named for a third game, to just get him and hope for the best, because it gives you extra money to spend. It's 110 grand more than you'd get for Bailey Humphrey, for example. And then you got Matt Rowell, who just was unbelievable last week. We know he always dominates against the Eagles. He's still he's cheaper than Zach Merritt, I think, but maybe not as cheap as he was a couple of weeks ago. So what do you think about bringing in those two guys?
Yeah, I went early on Blake Drury. I thought he was pretty good in round one. Obviously, North got a lot of injuries. So I think he stays in the side. I think he'd be better than the 17 points. So I still like it. Again, gives you the cash. It is a DPP as well, which could help you toggle if the worst case he does get dropped in the coming weeks. Matt Rowell, an interesting one. Obviously, I think Kane Corns called him out at some point, maybe last week or in the last couple of weeks, about just not doing enough damage to the ball or getting enough on the outside. We've spoken about that before on this show and throughout his KFC SuperCoach career. Does so much work inside, but just can't do enough away from the contest, or at least after that initial spurt. But he did that. He did it all, I think, against the Eagles last week. Laid 17 tackles too, burst away from the stoppage, hit up teammates inside 50 as well. So 165 KFC SuperCoach points for him. He's had a good month too, 542K. A nice pod, I think, for KFC SuperCoach tons in the last 5 weeks. So, yep, I don't mind it. At the price, I think you break even 59. You wouldn't want to probably do it after this week, given what else is around. But I think if you're going this week, he's a nice pod.
And he does have that friendly buy, which could be very handy when we get to that point of the season in a few weeks. Interesting one here. Hayden's going trading out Grundy and bringing in Goldie. McKenna to Sharp, I don't mind. Now, Todd Goldstein did score 171 points last week, which was his highest score for a few years. Of the round. Yeah, incredible. It's like being back in 2015 SuperCoach. But looking at his numbers, he scored 119 the week before that, so and 131 a couple of weeks before that. So he's going pretty well. But in the ruck, I think if you were going to trade, had to bring in a ruckman, I think probably would Max Gawn be the guy you would be looking at. I mean, hopefully he might get forward status in a couple of weeks. And, well, I mean, this probably applies to Grundy too. We don't know what's Port Adelaide doing this week with their rucks, because that's Goldie went massive against Bryn Teakle. And this week, maybe Scott Lysett comes back in to play against the Demons, but his form earlier in the year wasn't all that inspiring. So is it a good week to get rid of Grundy?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It looks like Scott Lysett will come back in for Port, and Goldie did a number on Bryn Teakle last week, and we know Port shared around with Finlayson's pretty good around the ground as well. But given the uncertainty and around Port's rucks, and even with Lysett in the team, maybe you do keep Grundy. But again, if Hayden's set on jumping off, unless he's got Gawn, surely you have to go Gawn for, I think, 22K less, and the looming forward status as well. Goldie scored 54 the week before that 117-point performance as well. So not going to be the consistency from Goldie that we saw back in 2015, 2016, I wouldn't have thought. And Gawn's your man, I think, Hayden, if you are set on dumping Brodie Grundy.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, while we're speaking of rucks, Darcy Cameron, we think, will come back in for Collingwood this week. He's under 500,000 and he's got a break even in the 50s. I think you'd want to get a look at him, wouldn't you? But with the downside of that would be you probably miss out on his first price rise. So he put up some pretty big scores earlier in the year. Is he an option in the ruck? Or really, ideally, I think I would definitely want to get either him or Gawn if he gets DPP status in my forward line for the run home, just so you've got that coverage if a Sean Darcy or a Rowan Marshall misses a week.
Yeah, average 109, I think, with that injury affected 85 as well in round 3. I'd like to have a look as well. And I think there's still, yes, he's a low break even. You're not going to get him under 500K, but I think still 520 or 530 if he does come out and it works in KFC SuperCoach's favour the way he sets up with Mason Cox, because like I said, Cox is in form, was very good last week. So I think you can afford to wait. 5.20, 5.30 is still pretty good buying. And I think he's probably going to be, if he gets up and going again, hits the ground running, he's still a good option as a forward in his own right as well. So I think if you want to get Gawn, I don't think that means you can't get DCAM as well, because they both could still be in the top 6 forward averages from this point onwards.
Yeah. Yep. That's all good advice. Now, another player, so DPP.
Oh, this is your question. I know you want to pick this out for yourself. This is your man.
So, yeah, go and check those out on Code and Advertiser and Herald Sun, the latest DPP numbers. Tim, all over those. And one guy looks like he will get, he's been a midfielder only, but he will go back to being a mid defender, is Jaden Short. And his scores have been really good. I don't know that I'd pick him, though, to be honest, after I do love him, but just not sure what Dimmer's going to do with him each week. If he plays consistently at half back, he can definitely, be one of the top scoring defenders. A lot of us don't have too many spots left in our defence, but having said that, I was just talking to someone this morning who has Jordan Dawson in their midfield, and I thought that's actually not the worst idea, because the midfield is, a bit harder to pick. So you could have an extra mid defender or mid forward. The same could apply for a Sam Walsh type. Just play him in the midfield. But yeah, it's just a risk that you're not sure exactly what his role is going to be each week. Dimmer likes to flip him and say Liam Baker around. And, even any given week, he might be on a wing or thrown into the centre square and might hurt his scoring. So a bit risky, and I don't think he's super cheap either. So probably not for me. But, yeah, definitely, an interesting one to watch. And are there anyone else in the DPP list there that took your fancy? I think, well, you mentioned McRae, so he's a chance to get it at the last minute. Would you, given his scores and the role and everything, would you grab him if he does become a forward?
Yeah, he's the interesting one. He's the real watch. Again, you wouldn't pick him just because he's a forward, given how many spots we've got left, but probably comes down to the price. Now, he's pretty good value, 551K at the moment. He's going to break him to 145. So we look at KFC SuperCoach Plus, which, a great tool if you don't have it. When you're looking at your longer term buy rounds, you can judge an approximate prediction of what that player could be at in 3 or 4 weeks' time based on what they've been scoring. So that's what I've done in the trade guide. I've put approximate price so I can work out exactly the dollars I need. But, another couple of sub 100 scores, and he'll be down to 520. So that is probably where Jack McRae comes in to the picture. I'd love to get Sam Walsh, but I'm not probably going to spend an extra 100K and go Walsh over McRae. I'm not going to be able to afford to do it anyway with my trades left. So a real watch on McRae. You can take him in your last forward spot. If he's averaging 100, 105, you'd be happy with that, I think, as well. So a real watch, probably depending on price. If he comes down, hopefully he does in the next couple of weeks.
And we know with Bevo too, that role can change. So I think he had 2 centre bounces last week, which is his lowest since 2016. But, who's to say in a few weeks' time he's not right back up there and Treloar comes back in and he's playing at half forward and, they throw Caleb Daniel back into defence and, he loves to, they're going pretty well, I suppose, at the moment. But these things can definitely change. So you want to be on the lookout for those kind of things. And if you see the role starts to look a lot friendlier, then maybe that's the time to jump on, especially, as you say, if he's pretty cheap. Speaking of Bulldogs, Ed English has the money to get Merritt, who we've already said we really like, but tempted by Libba. So talking about those midfield players being really hard to pick this year, he's one that we all pretty much missed, I think. He's the 5th highest averaging midfielder, averaging 118.5 for the year. Can you trust that? He does seem to be one that is unlikely to get moved to a different role, but with Bevo, who knows? It'd be a good pod.
Huge, 4% of teams only, 141 points last week, 340 plus scores in the past 6 rounds as well for him. So he's gone on a bit of a tear over the past 5 rounds. So he's in form. We know his game suits KFC SuperCoach, but we've spoken about a number of times already today, that we need all the cash we can get, even if you don't think you need it right now. So I'd probably still take the 60 or 70K that you can save with Zach Merritt and go with him, even though Libbers would prove a good pod. I think if you look at your longer term plan and you think you need the cash, and given some of the rookies that are around that aren't making cash, we think a lot of teams will need it, I'd probably take the money and go with Merritt.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Try and get through a couple more quickly before we get to some captain talk. Mitch saying that he threw up Liam Baker earlier in the year and we shot him down, but he's actually turned out he's been a pretty good pick. So we'll cop that one. But I'm still just nervous about, on any given week, he might be thrown to half forward or given a different role because we know how much Dimmer loves what he can do and he's very versatile. So, yeah, still a bit risky, but yeah, he would have been a good pick if you had him at the start of the year. I listened to a very Richmond one-eyed podcast, and they had a great stat about Liam Baker being the shortest. He's in the top 10 interceptors in the AFL this year, and he's the shortest by about 25 centimetres. All the other guys are, tall defenders, and then you got him. So, he's having a great year, and, love him as a Richmond fan, but not sure I'm be confident enough to pick him in KFC SuperCoach. I don't know if you feel differently. And what about a couple of sort of left field options if people are, don't have much money and they don't really like the rookies this week? Could you go sideways even from a Hopper to Kennedy or pick someone like Lloyd Meek?
Liam Baker, love him as a player too. A very, very good player, but still 3 scores in the 60s this season. He's probably going to keep his average probably just below 100, which it is now, 96.8 or thereabouts, I think. It's probably where he's going to finish. He's going to have some big scores, and we're going to bring him up, and then he might have a couple of low ones, depending, like you said, if Dimmer moves him around. So, great starting pick. I agree, but I'm still not sure there's enough value to pick him now. There's more options around that have dropped in price that can probably outdo him from here, I think. Matt Kennedy is an interesting one. We discussed him at length on the Lair. We got a few questions, multiple questions about Matt Kennedy, given his price. Obviously, he was sub for a couple of weeks in a row, down to 347K. So that's 185K discount on his starting price. It was pretty good on the weekend, 89 KFC SuperCoach points, like he was in the first 2 rounds before the injury, 96 and 110. But again, yes, he makes some money off the Hopper trade, but where's Kennedy going to get you? What's he going to average from here? Are you committing to another trade anyway? I can see it maybe if you want a bit of a quick hit and you need the extra 150K or whatever it is, 110K to make an upgrade this week. But again, I think you want to have a fair few trades in the bank to go down to a Matt Kennedy because you're going to need another one. When we say need, you don't need another one to upgrade him. He could finish on your field. He's not going to probably give you your rookie scores unless he's the sub again. But you're going to be giving up a few extra points, especially, teams might be finishing their midfields with Callum Mills when he's back at 400K, and he could get Kennedy by 25, 30 points each week, potentially, if he goes back into the midfield. So you're going to be giving up some points, I think, if you've got Kennedy to finish your team in the run home.
Yeah, we could open a whole other can of worms with talking about those discount midfielders, and maybe that's a topic for the next couple of weeks because, looking at my team, and I did that bit of a plan, sort of trying to emulate what you laid out. And in 2 or 3 weeks, I reckon I could pretty much have a finished defence, a finished forward line, a finished ruck line, but I still have about 4 spots left in the midfield. And I think a lot of people might be in a similar boat, especially when, maybe you've got a Cornelio or a Goulden or something sitting there at the moment. And, every chance they end up there for me in my final team, which wouldn't be a terrible result. But if you can hang on through the buys, there's going to be some super cheap players at the other end, like a Callum Mills could drop all the way down to nearly 400K, which is terrible if you picked him last week. That's just such bad luck. But for everybody else, that's going to be an absolute bargain. Tuke Miller, not exactly sure when he's back, but if he drops, he'll be a really nice pickup as well. And, LDU lost, is, cheaper than he started, and he'll be one to watch when he comes back from injury too. So, I think the midfield might be the last place we fill out. And just last question before captains, on another one of those midfielders, Matt's looking at Lachie Neale this week. So he's dropped a heap of cash as well. And I think he's got a really high break even. So you could even wait another week. But then the Lions have the first buy. So I'd probably be waiting till after round 12. But he would definitely be someone I'd be looking at then. What do you make of his season? If you take out his 170 against North, he hasn't had too many other big scores.
No, he's been interesting. Obviously, we watched Dan Batten started him, the ups and downs, and followed along and probably enjoyed his frustration at times, I think. But I'm still looking at him. If you can get Lachie Neale at 550K, which he could be, given his break-even of 155 this week, he could be available for that after the buy. So that's when I'll be looking at him. Again, to finish off the midfield. He's not probably going to get back to his 120-point days unless he goes an absolute tear, given Josh Dunkley is in there, we know, and it's the way it's all working at the moment. It is working for the Lions after that round 1 performance anyway. against the Power. But again, 550K for Lockie Neal. If we can get close to 110, that's more than enough. And we know his big weeks will outweigh the times he's a little bit more quiet.
Yep, absolutely. All right. It's Friday night. The footy is on, and your KFC Friday night feast is on its way. Score free delivery on your Friday night footy feast every Friday when ordering through the KFC app or kfc.com.au. It's game on, and there will be, I'll have the KFC out on the couch on Friday night because it is a fantastic game to start the round. Melbourne heading over to Adelaide Oval to take on the Power, who are on a 6-game winning streak. Few options there that we could consider as captain. Phantom, anyone that you like to maybe get the round off with a massive score?
Oh, yeah, well, the footy's here this weekend. I'll be popping down walking from the city past Hindley Street KFC. I reckon I'll just devour a zinger box on the way to the footy, and who knows, if my VC Clayton Oliver goes big, we might enjoy the night. Might have to pop back past KFC on the way home as well. So we'll see how we go. But Clayton Oliver, it's a massive game for VC options on Thursday night. Clayton Oliver, if you've got him, we know he loves Adelaide Oval. Some big KFC SuperCoach double tons here against the Crows in recent years. So you probably have to go him if you've got him. If you don't, and you've got a Christian Petrarca instead, even though he said he's sore, we know how big he can go. And Max Gawn as well. Obviously, would have looked a bit better if it was Bryn Teakle in the ruck, but it looks like it could be Scott Lysett. But again, he's a bloke they pulled up again from the Sandful. We got dropped. Hasn't been flying in the Sandful either. So I don't think he's going to come back and give Max Gawn and Brodie Grundy a run for their money. So Gawn, Oliver or Petrarca, VC, definitely on the Friday night, I would have thought. What do you think?
Well, I don't have Oliver, so maybe it's a little bit wishful thinking. But if I look up his KFC SuperCoach history, he only scored, I think it was at 69 against the Power last year. I believe Willem Drew gave him some attention. Can you see that happening again?
Maybe. Good matchup for Clayton Oliver, Willem Drew. Petrarca too, as well. We know what he can do. Forward of centre might be one of them. Obviously it's a little bit of a concern. We know Oliver's probably worked through a bit since then as well. He's tagged or had a bit of attention a few weeks ago in gather round at Adelaide Oval from Will Setterfield, I think it was, and then he had about 35 touches in the last quarter that day as well. So something to consider, but I still think it'd be difficult to overlook him and his record as VC.
Yeah, if I had him, I think I would definitely be tempted. Now, Matt Murphy's thrown up a good scenario here, which I would definitely be looking at. Goulden VC into Bont now. Errol Goulden playing, he's scored 156 in his last 2 games, so he's absolutely flying, your man, and plays North Melbourne. So poor old North are obviously not travelling too well, and they've got a few things going on. Brett Ratton's going to be coaching. I'm not sure how they'll go. I mean, the Swans aren't going too great either, but this might be a good game for Errol to rack up another big score. The problem here is if I check the start time of these games, I believe the Sydney North game starts at 1:45, and then the Bulldogs Adelaide game at Ballarat starts at 2:10. So you'd have to hope Goulden has a massive first quarter to be confident to make a call. Well, yeah, true. So I think I'd probably have to choose either Goulden or Bont. So which way would you lean there?
Yeah, it's a hard one. Goulden could go massive, but you sort of have to go. If you're choosing out of those two, I reckon it's still Marcus Bontempelli. You like to fall back on Bont as captain. It sounds like a good combination, but again, when you look at the fixture like that, I think you probably have to go Bont VC. But then who are you going to go a C out later in the week? Matt says Dacos, big game player already, you think, against the Blues. Probably could be the way to go.
Yeah, that's the interesting one. So, we've got, as you said, with the Friday night and then early Saturday, we're stacked for options, and then it's a little bit trickier. A couple of people throwing up some ideas here. Rowan Marshall in the last game of the round against Matt Flynn. I don't mind that. Like, he's in a pretty good run of form. Marshall, I think, would he have about 10 disposals last week and scored 130? 21 he has to advantage. Yeah, incredible. So he's an option. He's been playing really well. Another one, Merritt, we mentioned, has a really good record against the Tigers. Just maybe a little bit nervous with what he's played a little bit at half forward last week. So it's tricky. The other one that I might look at is Big Shrek Darcy, who's coming off a 155 and plays against the Cats. On Saturday afternoon over in Perth. So probably John Segler in the ruck there for Darcy. So bit tricky, but I think I'm going to be sucked into the Goulden one, I think, because We saw what he
Ooh.
did in the preseason where he nearly scored 200. So we know he has that just enormous scoring ceiling. It'd be
And
hard
obviously,
to.
it wouldn't have come up in conversation with JP last night, I don't think. Famously, I think traded him out
He did.
a few weeks ago.
Oh, mate, he was a bit flat. He didn't really want to talk about. Didn't really want to talk about KFC SuperCoach. So yeah, that might have a bit to do with it. But yeah, no, lots of big calls to make this week, and I'll just leave you with. We had a question late coming in, which I think is just about the question of the round from James. He wants the Phantoms' help, Berry or Sharp, and I suppose you throw Drury and Humphrey into this equation. And I mean the other one, what people shouldn't really dismiss totally is Josh Weddle, who we weren't so sure about last week as a key defender for Hawthorn, but he was really good. So he's gone up to about 160,000, but does seem to have a safe spot in the team now, which is, could be worth a lot, especially if some of these guys don't get picked tonight.
Yeah, well, maybe James already has Blake Drury potentially here. So if we'll just go with the head-to-head. I'd probably pick Harry Sharp, given Holman back in the team, Ben Ainsworth at some point as well, potentially. So I reckon if you have to choose between those two, I'd choose Harry Sharp. So James will probably come after me when Tommy Berry stays in and kicks 5 this weekend. And well, I'm the SuperCoach mole, apparently, as Hipster pointed out on the lair. I'm trying to sabotage people, but long time listeners will know I'm always here for the people. So if I was doing that, James, if I had that head-to-head, I'd be going with Harry Sharp, I think.
Yeah, I think I like Sharp. I think the Hipster might have mentioned this on the lair too, that I picked Harry Sharp about 2 years ago when he was still in high school, played the first 2 rounds, and then he was on the bubble, and then we never saw him again for the rest of the year. So he finally gets a bubble game. So I think I might have to jump on. It's actually going to be a good Q clash. We'll have to tune in from a KFC SuperCoach point of view. We'll have lots of both these guys, and then obviously Bailey Humphrey and Rory Atkins, who I brought in last week. So Will Ashcroft, if people still have him, lots of good rookies running around. Should be a good game that actually for probably Gold Coast best chance of breaking that Q clash losing streak, but then the Lions are going pretty well also. So lots to decide on this week. The teams tonight will be huge, especially with a lot of these rookies, to see who gets named and who doesn't. So we'll be paying very close attention to that. So make sure you come back and check those out in a few hours' time. But Phantom, thanks very much for jumping on. Still no sign of Dan Batten, so I'll have to go and try and find him.
He's running scared. Dan Batten is running scared. Can't face the music. If he's going to call me out like that, he has to at least front up when it doesn't go his way. I look forward to not seeing him here next week.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, everybody, for joining on. Good luck with your trades this week in KFC SuperCoach, and we'll talk to you soon.